We've talked about the what to say, the how do we actually create, how do we produce it. And now a lot of people forget that content needs to be distributed, needs to be put out there. So we're talking about specific things that you can do to increase your audience and then to remove the friction to actually go ahead and execute it. What is the intention that we put into distributing specific pieces of content versus the safety net of content? So how can we establish a system that keeps those out for new people to find it? And then on top of that, there's a layer of intentional content where it's like we're answering questions. Can we tag our guests? Can we collaborate with them? All these puzzle pieces, how do we put them in place in the week so it goes out automatically? If we have something that's set in stone for consistency, which we know is like the mother of everything, because without consistency we cannot measure anything. Perfect. Then we can use systems and team members or even AI software to be able to put these pieces up for circulation, right? Hey guys, and welcome back to Condense Profit. Today I have a very special behind the scenes episode. We are working on a little bit of a secret project now for a few months with a friend of the pod, and we'll announce that very, very soon. But what I wanted to share is one very detailed conversation that I had with this person. It's actually like me kind of unloading a lot of information about the distribution phase of our 6-lever process, right? So, we've talked about the what to say, the how do we actually create, how do we produce it. And now a lot of people, forget that content needs to be distributed, needs to be put out there. So we're talking about specific things that you can do to increase your audience and then to remove the friction to actually go ahead and execute it. And we go like really tactical. We give some examples of podcasts. We give some examples on YouTube. What are some metrics that you should be looking at to get better at your process and increase your audience and remove the friction so then you can monetize and manage all this process all together. So I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if this helps you. Let me know if you have any questions as well. You can send us a message at BizBrosco in every single platform. And I would love to hear your feedback since this is a new style that we are creating for you. All right, enjoy. We ended up in distribution. So this is the 4th lever, right? And there's ways that we can increase the attention and decrease friction, right? So a few of these elements are what is the intention that we put into, distributing specific pieces of content versus the safety net of content. So examples are safety net is something that is very consistent, that we don't miss a day. So in our case, that could be the clips from a podcast that could serve the purpose of promoting the podcast, but also elevating you as a brand or as an authority, right, in the space. And that's something that goes out every day. So how can we establish a system that keeps those out for new people to find it? In fact, I was just checking YouTube, and it's an average of 87% of people are finding our show or stuff because of shorts, for example, right? So if we put that on Instagram Reels and TikTok as well, new people are going to be familiar with our faces, with our brand, with our show at XYZ, and then a number of people will transition to consume it, will transition to trusting us, and so on. Now, on the intention side, on this side would be like, okay, what is a piece of content that we can create specifically, right, to solve a problem or to answer a specific question, right? So this could be like a smaller YouTube video, that could be a smaller reel, right? A 1-minute reel, but it answers that specific questions. These might take a little bit more resources than just clipping a long form piece of content. But again, what is that mix? So do we have a safety net that keeps daily content? And then on top of that, there's a layer of intentional, content where it's like we're answering questions. So an example of this could be you can have a frequently asked questions, and let's say you have 10 of those. You can create a reel for each one of those. So you can create a YouTube video for each one of those, and then you distribute those 2 per week, for example, right? So what are these layers that we're creating for that? That will obviously increase the audience number, right? Can we tag our guests? Can we collaborate with them? So these are more tactical for the distribution of the content. At this point, can we run ads with them to that content, right? Like there's many ways that we can collaborate with the other person that's part of our platform to increase the audience level, right? We can dive deeper into this. But what are some things that creatively we can do with them. Let's say they have a newsletter, let's say they have a physical magazine. Can we provide them with some content where they can put it in that magazine, and then some of their readers and listeners, come to our show, for example, right? And then obviously maximize sharing opportunities other than just social, a little bit of that, right? So do they have actually a physical location? Can we, what are some opportunities where we can, bring our message in front of their audience, right? And this will be specific based on, the person that we're talking with. Let me see if I can think some examples. Oh, this is a good example. Very weird example. So we had an incredible person, George Bryant, come to our show. He's been there, I think probably 3 or 4 times. And because of the energy of the show, and we were resonating a lot with what he was saying, he invited us to actually MC one of his mastermind, high-level mastermind. So that event allowed us to be in front of, 20, 30 incredible entrepreneurs, MCing his event, but also sharing our message. And from that, we got business. From that, we got authority. From that, we got an incredible experience. So again, we can get really creative. It doesn't just have to be social, right? And then to remove the friction, meaning how can we make distribution faster? How can we make distribution more effective? I would recommend something like a distribution matrix, right? So it's like, okay, now we have a safety net of content, which is, let's say, 7 clips per week, plus 5 stories, plus intentional content 2 times a week, right? All these puzzle pieces, how do we put them in place in the week so it goes out automatically? And it's not us distributing. Maybe it's a virtual assistant or an intern or somebody in our team that can put those pieces into distribution. And they simply as, put in the days of the week from top to bottom, and then hour times. And it's like this piece of content, number 1, goes on Tuesday at 5 a.m., right? This other piece of content goes on Wednesday at 8 a.m. And just making sure that it's consistent. What's going to happen if you do this for 2-3 months? You're going to start seeing trends. Be like, oh, people are consuming more at this time, or people are consuming more this type of content, or why this piece of content didn't get any views, why this piece of content got 1,000 views more than normal, right? And you're going to start seeing trends, and then you can adapt that. What happens is a lot of people or distribution teams lose a lot of time by grabbing, let's say the folder of all the content that's ready. And at the time that they're looking at the content being, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this there, I'm going to put this there. But if we have something that's set in stone for consistency, which we know is like the mother of everything, because without consistency, we cannot measure anything. Perfect. Then we can use systems and team members or even AI software to be able to put these pieces up for circulation, right? And obviously delegate as soon as you can. So I'll say try out your own system for distribution, test it out, measure it, like how long is it going to take? And then you can start plugging people in there. So a good example is where with our customers in Content Momentum, they have 2 options. Once we deliver the full batch of content, sometimes can be very high volume. It can be really intimidating. We ask them, hey, do you have a team member that maybe can join in here and we can teach them how to do this? So we deliver a distribution matrix. So it's like your pieces of content are numbered from 1 to 10, let's say 10 clips. Perfect. Monday we distribute 1 and 2 at 5 a.m. and 7 p.m., right? For example, right? And then we go through that Monday through Friday. Here's where the captions are. Here's where the elements are. And they'll be very surprised that a map like that might take, 1 to hour and a half a week to distribute. But we just think it's a lot more, right? Because maybe we're doing it in the team, we're context switching. So how can we group those activities to make it like super effective and then delegate it to somebody else? Here's an example, a visual example of a content map, right? You have your main pieces of content, which are your macros, MP3, which is audio, MP4, which is video, a transcript, that's a supporting asset for the video. Sometimes your sub files, whatever, right? And then you have your videos and then your vertical quotes. So in this case, 5 vertical videos and 1 vertical quote. And then in the next slide, we see kind of the distribution matrix, right? You have Friday, the episode release that goes out with an email with a link to the YouTube channel. It goes out with a Facebook post that links to the YouTube channel. They have an Instagram carousel that they do organically. And then the person has an organic Instagram story that they do on social media. And then from Saturday all the way to Thursday, the rest of the content goes out, videos from Saturday all the way to Wednesday, and on Thursday that's the quote, and then they have different clips and things that they do organically to do that. That's minimum edit. So you have these layers of content, and then you give this to a VA with the folder with the content, and they are ready to rock and roll, and then you saved a ton of time. Another thing that, in the face of distribution that we need to be aware is it's not just, hey, let's put the content out. It's the feedback that we're getting from putting that content out, right? So one of the ways that we can do is, can we go back to the platforms and see what is the content that's performing better, or is the performance that's doing well? And one of the things is identifying your outliers. What are the pieces of content, assuming you have a safety net of content that you do consistently over a long period of time, that are doing better than other pieces? So in this specific case that I'm showing right here, we've published the same content, the same clip. We're in a stage in the modern media world that you can publish a vertical piece of content in 3 different platforms, sometimes 4 if you count Facebook Reels. Not the same as Instagram Reels. And then each platform will resonate, or the consumers that are in those platforms will resonate differently with those pieces of content. So in our case, you can see here that we're showing 6 videos. On Facebook, those 2 videos are different than the ones that on YouTube, and they're different than the ones on TikTok, for example. So, well, that's interesting. TikTok consumer is definitely different than a Facebook consumer. Why is that? So then now you can start grabbing that data, and you can start serving or creating content that's specific to that platform if you have the capacity and the resources to do so. How we've tried to use it is we grab, for example, this one that says the 33% rule for personal blah, blah, blah. This is something that Ty Lopez said, and it was a quote that Fonzie mentioned. We grab that as an idea to develop a full episode, for example, right? So if we don't have a guest, we have a bank of solo episode ideas based on outliers, based on ideas, based on things that we're listening on calls. And then we can go back to lever number 2 and create based off of that, and then produce it and distribute it, and the clips go on and on and on. So it's a great way to do that. And there's different platforms out there that allow you to create something or do something called social listening, right? So same thing. On one side, you are social listening for what your audience and the people that you're serving are asking. You can create it on that. And on the other side, you are listening for the feedback based on the content that you already created to see if it's resonating. Another tactics that you can do with this is you can grab those outliers and you can run them as ads. I recently was listening to Frank Kern, and he's amazing. He has a course called intent-based marketing, right? And he calls it the oldest trick in the book, and is create a piece of content demonstrate by showing people how to do the thing and actually helping them, right? It's like, literally, here's the whole process, and then he runs ads to that content, and then eventually people end up buying, right? So it's simple. Are we helping people? The other indicator that we have here, specifically on podcasts and long-form content, is the 7-day and the 30-day data, right? So, quick recap, we have a long piece of content with micro pieces of content that go out consistently on a weekly or monthly basis. For the short pieces of content, we found some outliers based on what people consume, meaning what are the ones that are triggering the more views and more comments and more engaging, right? And then on long-form video or long-form audio, in this specific case, we're doing what is the download data and the consumption data of 7 days versus 30 days, right? So on a 7-day launch, right, let's say you average 400 downloads in this specific case that I'm showing here per episode, then is there one that did above 400, like 700, 800, it doubled in downloads during that 7-day period? What happened? Was it a better hook, right? Was it a good headline? Was it a good promise that people is triggering new downloads? Was it a new promotion? And then you can start comparing that 7-day data with other episodes and be like, we are getting better at this. Are those numbers increasing? Are we running some kind of promotion that is triggering downloads immediately? So an example could be a scenario number 1. We create the episode, we write the headline, we distribute, there's no promotion. There's no clips, we don't tell anybody. Perfect. Organic people from the podcasting platforms will listen. Now, scenario number 2 is we create, we put the headline, we put out, and then we promote on one newsletter. And that newsletter drives double the traffic, right? Well, perfect. What's the different thing there? Is the promotion in the newsletter. Can we do that again? And then you can start measuring 7-day downloads that way. Now, for 30-day, right, what happens is that's called the long tail of your podcast. So your podcast will live, right, in the platform, hopefully, for a long time. What happens is like people now are finding you because they're searching for that topic. Maybe they're searching for the name of the guest that you have. And that episode will continue to grab downloads over a long period of time. Maybe they're finding it on your website. Maybe they're finding it on another newsletter promotion. Maybe you ran an ad to it, right, after the first 7-day period. So then you start seeing the long tail downloads. So let's say your 7 days, 400 downloads, and then your 30 days, 2,500 downloads. What happened between the 7-day and the 30-day? Did we increase promotion? Did we run ads? Was it organic? Did we put it on newsletter? And then if we find those indicators, right, then we can start replicating and continue to put those pieces into our distribution matrix, right? Was the guest sharing it on their platform, right? So like, what are those things? And my recommendation is, pick 1 or 2, which is, it's going to make your job a lot easier to identify what that, good thing for promotion is. Instead of trying 7 things at once, right? For YouTube, right, indicators, podcasting on YouTube is a whole different animal because you're competing for the attention for a consumer that's used to probably a different video, right? So yes, there are people that consume podcasts on YouTube, 100%, right? But at the same time, a YouTube consumer might be sitting, I think now TV YouTube consumption is higher than computer YouTube consumption. With that said, this is where we can start grabbing data and learning a lot. So for example, YouTube will give you the still watching after 30 seconds. So it's your first 30 seconds, your first 5 seconds and 30 seconds of the video. Do we have something engaging in there that will allow people to continue to consume the content, right? If they're not, so in this specific case that I'm showing here, one of the videos, people are falling off after only 62% are watching after the first 30 seconds. What happened to the rest of the 40 seconds? Was the promise not enticing enough? Was the content not exciting enough for them? So these are the questions that we can start asking to make the content better, right? Click-through rates, right? A lot of people that are familiar with YouTube, this is, from your thumbnail to consuming the content is what's that rate? So, I don't think we haven't come across there's no specific per industry, for example, right? I think our theory is that you have to start putting content out there and see what yours is doing. So if your average is, let's say, a 5% click-through rate or a 2% click-through rate, then can we do better? Right? Can we achieve a 7%? Can we achieve an 8%? Can we achieve, in this case, we have a few here with 14% and 8.3%. That means that those are doing way better than the other ones. So do we have a good headline? Do we have a good thumbnail? Do we have a good name leverage, right? So people are looking at it, causing, and then they click. On consumption data, right? Consumption means, are people listening to our show? Are people watching the show? So in this specific case here, I'm showing 3 episodes, with 95%, 92%, 91%. That means people are listening to those episodes almost to the end, right? And then there's other episodes here that are 25%, 24%, 24%. So these, we're looking at both ends saying, okay, the ones that people are consuming a ton, what are we doing well there, right? Is our energy good? Are the questions good? Is the conversation exciting for the people listening? For the ones that we didn't do good, 25%. Why are people falling off after 25%? Maybe we got a lot into personal stories, for example, which for a long time, that's what we were doing instead of actually giving tactical advice for content, right? So maybe that's it. So it's just a great way. But funny enough, here, I have a video that is 24% consumption data on audio, but it has been our most downloaded episode. Then obviously, on YouTube, you'll see those data as watch time. So, in this case, you have 38%. Compared to 4% or 4.5%. So we're okay, on YouTube, we're getting a lot of data. So on YouTube, there's more elements that you can play with, right? Is not only the conversation is good, is it visually appealing for people to be okay, I'm actually watching this. There's so many elements that we can start learning from what this is, right? from what the data is telling us. So why are people falling off? How can we keep them engaged throughout the episode, and so on. And that wraps up our distribution phase.